My name is Jack Costello, and I was hired at St. Clair College in August of 1967, actually a month before St. Clair officially came into existence. And I was hired by a leader and a great man, Al Hoffman, who was the athletic director at that time. And both he and John Martel, who's with me here today, took courses at the University of Windsor for our degree in human kinetics. And that's where we met. And from there, Al showed interest in me and had me come on as the assistant athletic director and to teach some courses in phys ed and coach the hockey team. I was also supposed to teach economics, but we never did get around to that. The next guy that was hired after that was Bob Weepers, who became a tremendously important part of our department. So the three of us, Al and Bob Weepers and I, kind of started the programs and the activities here at St. Clair in the athletic area. In those days, we had very little or no facilities. We started at Mercer Street, and we used Patterson Collegiate for our basketball and badminton and other activities. And we also made use of the Windsor Arena and Riverside Arena as well for intramural and intercollegiate ice hockey. And we branched out into other activities in the areas of wrestling and weightlifting and table tennis. Isaac Barsky was a great guy that led our table tennis activity. And there were a lot of people. And I also have to give credit to Lauren Clark and Dewey Grant, who I always get the credit for starting the hockey program at St. Clair College, and that's not really true. Lauren Clark and Dewey Grant ran a hockey program at the Old White, and they laid a pretty good foundation for me. So when I came along, there still were some players here. In fact, in our first year, we used the Old White uniforms, the red and white uniforms, before we got our green and gold colors later on. And that was instrumental, mainly through the leadership of Bob Weepers. But from there, we branched out and we hired different people. And Al was very, very ambitious and very dedicated and wanted to get as diversified a program as possible and get as many activities. In fact, sometimes I think we overextended ourselves. We were working till all hours of the evening and the early mornings, lining fields at Weigel Park. And then later off, we moved out here to this campus when it was just all grass and a couple of wooden Quonset huts. And we used Vets Park and Holy Redeemer, and all those facilities had to be renovated and upgraded in order to accommodate intercollegiate activity at the college level. And then shortly after that, John can fill you in, we hired actually Bill Ryder came in for a while and worked with us and made a great contribution. And then we had a lot of people come along, and then the most significant hire was John Martel, who was instrumental in diversifying our program even more and bringing new activities. So I'll hesitate here for a minute and come back later and let John take on from here.
Thanks, Jack. Essentially, some of the things that I was hired for by Jack and by Al Hoffman, and also there was another member of the committee at that time, John Mio, who was basically the president of the St. Clair College Athletic Association, which had been started just before my time. So when I was hired, I was told, okay, John, you know, you've got experience coaching basketball, so here's a women's basketball team. Oh, by the way, they haven't won hardly any games in the past. And so you have to take that and move that forward. So I did. I became coach of the women's basketball team for 4 years. And I'm proud to say that in those 4 years, we won 2 silver medals and 2 bronze medals. And then also I was asked to set up an outdoor education program, which I did. We bought some canoes and had a trailer made by the welding department. And we used that, and we took people camping, and we taught outdoor education and survival skills. The other thing that I was asked to do, which was really quite important, a big part of what I did, was to be the advisor to the Student Athletic Association. So I became the intramural coordinator at that time and continued that for the next 5 years. And then the other thing that I was asked to do was to expand and start teaching more physical education classes. Now, the gym had been open for 1 year, less than a year by the time I came here, and the swimming pool was also very active. And we had a lady by name of Dorothy Strachan who basically took part in leading all of the swimming programs. And then lastly, the other bit that I was asked to do was to start some coaching services. So I don't know if you remember, Jack, but basically for about 2 years, we were the precursors to the national certification coaching programs. So we had that here for a couple of years. So that's basically how I got started, and basically some of the things that I was asked to do in terms of expanding.
I think John's being very humble here. He had a couple other things that stick out in my mind too. He came on here and started a fitness testing program in later years that became very popular, not only with the students, but with the staff. And I think we improved a lot of people's healths through that particular program. And the other thing that came up after one of his, I think, trips somewhere, he came back with the idea of putting up a parkour around the college campus, which was a trail, fitness trail, where people could run and walk, and there were exercise stations every so many hundred yards, and it became quite a popular thing too. So you deserve some credit for that too, John.
Thank you. But basically, I guess some of the memories that I have is coming in here. As you said, we were working late and getting here early, and walking in the morning, parking by the old tennis courts and walking in, and I'd be looking at the building and I'd be saying to myself how lucky I was basically to have worked here and to have spent all these years here.
Well, I look at these new facilities now, and I've said to many people that Dr. Quinton, Al Hoffman, and Bob Weepers would be rolling over in their graves, because it's truly, truly a vision that became a reality. I mean, this is something they dreamt about, but never ever realized that it would come to fruition. So it's just wonderful to see the job that the people at the college now are doing and what they've done to expand the programs. You know, and the things that come to mind are like all the people that contributed, like the Wayne Howells and the Doug Queens and the people that worked on our staff, and John mentioned Dorothy Strachan, and there are so many others. And our secretaries too in those days, Carol Martinello and Monica Burgess, and we got them involved in the programs. And we used to have a staff fitness thing at Massey Collegiate on Tuesday and Thursday night, where the women from the registrar's office and all the departments in the college, we had quite an active group that came out there twice a week. And of course, we made it a social thing. After the activity, we went out for a few libations, and it was always a very interesting evening. So we really got the faculty involved. And Al and I both felt that that was a very important part of our mandate, is to show the academic side of the college, that we weren't just athletes, we were student athletes, and that's what we were trying to educate. And we instituted a program that Bob Weepers took over later and really handled well, where we set up a group of academic advisors in every program. And those advisors were to keep track of all the student athletes, their attendance and their grades. And if anybody slipped below a certain level, they were no longer eligible to participate in intercollegiate athletics. And the intramural program at our college, I think, was second to none, in the sense that the number of teams we had. I recall refereeing an intramural hockey game at Riverside Arena at 11 o'clock till 12 o'clock at night, with 200 to 300 fans in the stands, led by Jamie Pohl and the technology group. And they had placards and walking up and down the boards. And it was and this was an intramural activity. You know, it was just a wonderful experience to play with. And we used to operate, and after those games were over, and we'd bring the Tom, let me see now, Tom, what was Tom's name? He was a student here, Tom Harris. Tom Harris helped me in my first year. He was a student at White, and we used to bring the uniforms back down into the basement, the old furnace room at Mercer Street, and hang them up to dry, because we had to use them again the next day. You know, we were just one program went right after the other. So there was a lot of things that went on behind the scenes to make the programs work. And so many people contributed to those things, students, staff, and the athletic department. And those are just some of the things. I'll turn it back to John and see if he's got any other recollections.
Yeah, I do, actually. The first year that I was here, one of my roles was, as I've said already, to be in charge of the Student Athletic Association. Well, at that time, we also, Jack, I don't know, you must remember that we had a gun range, a shooting
Rifle
range down in the basement at the other end of this building. And there was a crawl space, and we had some 22 caliber rifles, and we operated a shooting range down at that end. And I remember very vividly that all of this stopped basically because there was a janitor was in the other part of that basement, and this bullet, I guess, was going off the walls, and so we had to curtail that activity. But we took that space and we created a games room.
A games room and a weight room.
And a weight room in there. Small weight room down at the far end of the building, and the Student Athletic Association actually used that as a fundraising type of thing, where they hired people to sell the chocolate bars and the chip and the pop and so on and so forth. So that's some of the memories that I have about that time. Thank God we don't have that anymore. I think it would be frowned upon today.
Well, it's hard to realize today with all the facilities on campus here that what it was like in those early years. When you drove in here, there was just a couple of wooden huts, and I don't know how to describe where the Ford Center of Excellence is now, I believe. I'm not how accurate that is. No. And they were just constructing the basement and the first floor of the technology wing. So there were actually no facilities out here whatsoever. So as I said earlier, you know, we had to use all the scramble and use any kind of space we could get our hands on. And Hoff was good at getting space. Of course, we had always had the support of Dr. Quittent, and who was our biggest supporter and the big supporter of intramural and intercollegiate athletics all over. The Student Athletic Association banquet was one of the hits of the year. People attended that just for the enjoyment of it. Bob Weepers would MC it. Q would always have a few stories to tell and bring about a few laughs, and we tried to reward and award as many students as possible for their leadership. And out of that, there's another, you just triggered another thought in my mind, or I triggered it, and that is that we started, in later years, we started a leadership course. This is later when Brian Dabian and Ted Bicknell and Art Roberts and Ken Derrick and all those staff members were very, very supportive for our programs. And we brought together all the captains of the teams and the leaders from student government and the Student Athletic Association. And we taught a leadership course and had those students go out and recruit potential students for future years. And that became a very, very strong part of our program, because a lot of good, very good people got interested in developing the athletic area. And they, in turn, got the support of the academic staff, which only enhanced it even further. So those are some other memories that come to mind.
Other memories, Jack, are the trips that we did overseas. You led the first one, I believe, with the hockey team, and also with Al Hoffman's men's basketball team.
Yes.
And that was in '74, I believe, maybe '73. Then I also led teams twice. If you recall, the women's basketball team played in Sweden, 1976, and played in Finland and Russia in 1978. And that became a tool that we used basically to attract student athletes, the possibility that if you went to St. Clair, you could participate in these international trips. So maybe you want to talk about your first foray with the hockey team, I believe.
Well, the hockey team is an interesting development. I was very fortunate to be the coach of a team of a group of kids here and they were all mainly local kids. A lot of them from Riverside, Leamington, you know, the county. Essex. But they were very, very good athletes and good hockey players. And we started a city series here to raise money for some charitable group, I think the United Way, where we played the University of Windsor. And we'd get over 2,000 fans in the Windsor Arena to see the University of Windsor play St. Clair College. And our team did very well in those series, and as a result, maybe not as a result, but part of it that way, we ended up playing American universities, exhibition games. And there were a lot of teams in the American university circuit that really later didn't want to play St. Clair College because we weren't ranked in the U.S. system. And if we beat them, it didn't look good on their record. So we had a lot of situations where we had to go down and play them in what they called exhibition games or fun games, so it wouldn't go on their record. And we were quite successful against Ohio University, Ohio State, Kent State, and then Al followed along very much so with the basketball team, playing the University of Michigan Dearborn and Mercy College, and his basketball program was very, very successful. He won some championships, and we both won the OCAA. I don't know how many years, but I know that in the hockey program we went 3 years where we were undefeated in college play and very successful in exhibition play. And Al had almost the same amount of success, and it gave us a reputation throughout Ontario and then later throughout Canada as we went on to develop the Canadian Colleges Athletic Association. Both Al and I were founding members of that association, and it was a great reward to meet a lot of wonderful people and have the student athletes meet a lot of those people. In fact, we came up with an idea that never came to fruition. We wanted in the college circuit, we wanted our teams when they were on the road to take tours of local industry and meet with the executives of those industries to explore future vocational training or occupations, jobs. And some colleges were very interested in it, but our first encounter in that was we took our hockey team to North Bay, and we were scheduled to do a visit of the, I think it's called NODA, Northern Ontario, what was it was part of the DO line. Anyway, you needed U.S. military clearance to get into this facility. NORAD, that's right. That's what was part of NORAD. And anyway, we weren't allowed to go. And from that on, we wanted those students to come back down here and tour Chryslers and Fords and General Motors. And we did a couple of those things, but it never caught on, and it's too bad because I think it had great potential. You know, there was a lot of other stuff going on outside the classroom, again, trying to emphasize the idea that they were student athletes, not just athletes.
And I think, you know, thinking back, some of the other fun things, we talked earlier on about on Friday afternoons, how basically the place would empty and we would all end up at the old Sandhill, I believe it was called, at the corner of Huron Line, and I think it was Grand Maris at that corner, and there was no alcohol on site at that time, and there was just a few things. I also remember, Jack, my friend, in those days when I first came here, that you were handing out checks every 2 weeks. Okay. And
hopefully not from my pocket.
No, not from your pocket, but the college checks were all handed out basically by the supervisors on down. And on Friday afternoons, my friend, I remember a couple of times that you'd be sitting in the office and you'd be grinning at me and you would say, Johnny, 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 here's your check. You fooled them for another 2 weeks. They paid you. And I remember that very vividly. As part of some of the fun things. Now, of course,
I had forgotten about that. Yeah.
But now there's alcohol on campus, and there has been, you know, and nothing wrong with that. But in those days, certainly.
I think those visits to the Sandhill, I think, started in the. We had a lot of staff-student games.
Yeah.
We used to gather at the Windsor Arena and play a hockey game. Well, Bill Totten and a lot of other people played.
I played, you played.
Yeah. And after the game was over, we'd go to someplace for a little bit, and then Q would invite us all back to his house. And it would be late at night, and I'm sure that Mrs. Quittenden wasn't too happy with these episodes where we'd all arrive at her house. But Q would get up and recite poetry and sing songs, and we'd have a wonderful time. And then I'll be back here the next morning for another shot at it. But and from those staff-student games, you know, we branched out into all kinds of activity. And I remember one game out in the back 40, it was raining. We were playing a staff-student soccer game. And I remember a kid by the name of Frankie Mora, who was an outstanding soccer player. And Ken Derrick and I were playing way back at the defense. And I said to Ken, we got to stop this kid somehow. And I said, you take a run at him, and I'll come from behind you, and when he tries to beat you, I'll knock him on his can. Anyway, Frankie Morrow went through the two of us like, you threw a goose, and we were both lying in the mud, and the other guy that was lying beside us was John Charlesworth.
Oh, yeah.
So, but the students were very good about it,
Yeah.
and I think it enhanced the camaraderie of the. In fact, on the hockey program, I had like Art Roberts and Brian Davian would actually put all the equipment on and practice with my team. Full out,
Yeah.
and no questions asked. I mean, they didn't get any, they took the checks and everything else, but they became tremendous feedback for me as a coach.
Yeah.
They'd give me insights into personalities and problems that players were having, and of course, Brian was heading up the counseling department, and then went on to head up student services, I believe.
Yeah.
But, they were tremendous help, and there was all kinds of, I can't name them all.
Was there not a special trophy for those staff-student events?
Yes, there was. Yeah, there was a fur-lined. First of all, the Q came up with the idea that the Board of Governors trophy was the most prestigious trophy given to the outstanding athlete of the year. And then we devoted the Board of Governors. What was the Board of Governors trophy for the outstanding intramural athlete?
Yeah.
And then we went from there to the staff student games. I think we had, and that was all part of the athletic banquet. Yeah, that was, and it just added to the humor and camaraderie that existed. Yeah. So,
fur-lined bedpan.
Yeah.
That really goes back. When you think of all the people now that we had as athletes, Jack, I keep running into them all the time, and I just saw Pat Donlan, for example. Pat was one of the players that played on my original basketball team, and unfortunately her mother died just a few weeks ago. But basically, I hadn't seen her for quite a number of years.
It's funny you should mention that, Patty Donlan, because later on, that's another thing we neglected to mention. The first time that St. Clair College hosted the All-Ontario college basketball final, we were trying to think to do something special for the teams from out of town. And what we came up with was the idea that we'd have a banquet. Nobody else had ever come up with a banquet. In fact, this may have been the second or third year of college basketball. And banquets became an annual thing then at these events. But it was St. Clair College that started it. And I approached, there was a fellow here that was using the facilities, part of the staff fitness program, and Henry Mancero and a good friend of mine, Lou Bendo. And I approached both of them and I said, would you guys be interested in making a small donation towards a banquet, for all these provincial teams? And they said, sure, by all means. In fact, we'll get 6 or 7 other guys and we'll make it a good evening. So we pulled together what we called the Saints Booster Club. And later on, Patty Donlan became a member of that club when she was out working in the travel industry. So we used some of our graduates to come back and support the Booster Club. In fact, I think the sign of the Booster Club is still up over the equipment room in the facility, the old facility, I call it now. So, and those were, and then they were reaching out into the community for community support. So again, combined with, just saying all the support we had from all over the city was wonderful.
Well, there were some really well-known kids that graduated from the athletic programs. Who do you really recall? I'm thinking of the Hall guy that.
Well, we had from the hockey program, we had about 4 or 5 players that went on to play in the National Hockey League. Probably the one that had the most success at that level, strictly in sport, was Dan Newman. Dan Newman went on to play for the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers, and we had another guy, Al Houston, played in Cleveland in the WHA, and Del Hall went on to become the all-star left winger, playing on a line with Robbie Fatorik in Phoenix, and there was, I'm reluctant to leave anybody else, so Keith Kokola ended up playing in the International League and played a few games for Chicago in the WHL. But those were the successes in hockey. But we had more people that went on to further their education and to do well, not athletically, but job-wise, like the Roy Conliffs and the Les Teplickis and the Jimmy Riomes, and these guys went on to hold prominent positions in big companies in the U.S. and Canada and are still working at it. And their success stories, I remember 4 of our graduates one year went down to the University of Buffalo after our program, and they all ended up getting their university degrees on top of their college diplomas. And Les Toplicki maneuvered it in a way that he stayed an extra few months and played hockey and ended up getting 2 degrees. He got a business degree and a technology, an engineering degree from the University of Buffalo, and he went on to become the district manager of, what's the company, it's in the Midwest anyway, the big harvester, not harvester, but anyway, it's not coming to me. But those were some of the graduates that, you know, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out too. That
I can think, Jack, just on the women's basketball side, at least 2 people that I know of that basically got into coaching of kids and athletes. Kathy Rigg, I ran into her a few months ago. She was from Harrow, and basically she set up a girls basketball coaching clinic, and still does to this day. She was one of the athletes that went over to Finland and Russia. Yeah. So she's still active in coaching. And Joanne Johnson as well. She has coached, actually it's a big circle, because she coached the junior team at Valiant. Valiant has sponsored the women's basketball teams, young age groups in the city. And at least 4 of her students played on this year's varsity women's basketball team in the Canadian finals. So even when you think of the barriers that the women had, certainly when I first came here, there were barriers. I remember being given the practice schedule for the women's basketball team, which had not won very much before, and you know, I was told to develop a program, and I looked at the practice schedule, and I found that I was practicing 6:30 till 8, 2 days a week in half the gym. So I went to Mr. Hoffman, and I said, Al, I said, you know, you expect us to win? I said, do we play all our games in half the gym? And he said, no. I said, well, it would be nice to practice in our home gym at least once. So he rejigged the schedule, and I asked him, I said, why is this? Well, he said, you know, the women's team has never won, never done anything, and the men's team is always in the playoffs. But then after the first year, we made the playoffs and we won the silver. The men's team that year didn't even, you know, get into the playoffs. So the next year, things started to change, and we saw better access to change rooms and all of that. That's just the way it was. Yeah. So you had to fight these little battles. You had to change.
You trigger some other things. There were some women that went on to had great careers. Debbie Cowgill and Annette Bondi and Laurie St. Pierre. In fact, Laurie, I think, is married to Wayne Campbell, who's the athletic trainer here at the college now. And Wayne came on after Wayne Howell. And Wayne Howell was very involved, and he was the trainer for all our teams, on the road and at home. So he was a busy young man, and took over some areas, you know, like in the hockey program, he became almost like an assistant general manager for me. And until later years when I hired a guy by the name, well, I shouldn't say, he came on board. Bill Waldron made a significant contribution to the hockey program too as an assistant coach. And he kept all kinds of statistical data and kind of was the forerunner of what they presently call analytics.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, he was.
We were doing it without even realizing what we were doing. But Bill was a tremendous man and tremendous help to me.
Yeah.
Good.
That's good. That's a little quick close. Just thanks for, we enjoyed talking about the history.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this program. And, you know, I just want to wrap up by saying that if it wasn't for the leadership of Al Hoffman and the contribution of the Bob Weepers, the Wayne Howells, the Doug Queens, and many others, the John Martels, the Dorothy Strackens, you know, the program wouldn't have evolved into what it is today. And it's a tremendously proud moment for me to be part of the St. Clair heritage and all the history that's gone on and the successes they've had. And we wish them continued success, both as students and as athletes, therefore as student athletes.
Well said, Jack. I can't add to that. I'm proud to have been part of it as well, and tremendous leadership by Jack and other people as well. But you and I, Jack, we started out teaching at WD Low,
Yeah.
Okay, and then we both ended up at St. Clair College. Ron Malkin started
Yeah.
at W.D. Lowe.
That's right.
Went with me to William Hans, and then from there we both came here on the same year.
Yeah.
And Ron was instrumental in setting up, of course, the landscaping program, which is very, very well operated to this day.
Yeah.
But those are all the people who started this entire organization, and we're proud to have been part of it.
The great success of the St. Clair College intercollegiate athletic programs, in my opinion, is due mainly, or not mainly, but significantly to the history and tradition that has been established here at the college, and the students over the years, the student athletes over the years, trying to maintain and live up to that tradition. And the tradition started back in the days of White, really, and then transferred to St. Clair College. And the man that was responsible for White as the athletic director was Mr. Mason McDonald. And Mason was generous enough and kind enough to donate the first trophy to the Outstanding Student Athlete of the Year award, named after him and presented every year at the annual awards banquet. And it's still the most prestigious award at the banquet, I believe, along with the Board of Governors Bowl, which is given to the outstanding intramural athletes. And Mason deserves a lot of credit for establishing and being a pillar of that foundation. The first recipient of the Mason McDonald Award was a hockey player by the name of Bob Lawless, who went on to become president of McCormick Foods out of Baltimore, Maryland, and made a significant financial donation to the college a number of years ago, and along with a lot of his teammates has contributed to the tradition and history of the college. And I appreciate that as well.